This is the Real Tom Rose, and we're dealing with a quadratic equation question. This is a quadratic equation, right? So you've got an x squared term, an x term, and a number term. They want us to solve for k. And in order to do so, you can't just solve for k if they give you an expression like this. But what they tell us is that x minus 1 is a factor. So this is a kind of a confusing way of saying that there are multiple factors. And if we pull those factors out, so we should be able to, like when there's multiple factors, we should be able to build an expression that has the factor that they give us and some other thing, right? That's what a factor is. You divide something out and there's something left over, right? So they're saying if we pull that x minus 1 out, there's something left over. And that thing, can't really be a fraction. So we need to have some binomial inside here. So what we can do, and remember that this is going to be, when we multiply these two things together, we have to get the thing that they gave us, which is 3x squared minus 2kx plus 1. So those must be equal. And so when you multiply binomials, right, x minus 1 times something, you're going to have an x term, a sign, and another term. When you multiply those two things together, whatever the x term is, let's assume there's an x term in it. The first and the first, they need to multiply together to give you the x squared term. So this is going to need to be a 3, is what I'm working my way around to saying. So if this is a factor, then we need to have it, and we have an x term guaranteed, we need to have a 3x term, so that when you multiply x by 3x, you get 3x squared, and those are equal to each other. So we know that must be 3x. Now the second thing, let's work on the second part of it. When you multiply the number term for the first factor and the number term of the second factor, they must equal the number term in the result. So what does negative 1 multiply by to generate positive 1? The answer is another negative 1, right? Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So these must be our factors, right? So we just factored this thing, and we generated the factors. So how does this help us? Well, what you can do is you can FOIL this out. So I'm going to actually multiply these factors against each other. So we'll get 3x squared, let's do the inside, minus 3x, do the outside, minus x, and then do the two last things, plus 1. That must equal 3x squared minus 2kx plus 1. Those two things must be equal. So if they must be equal, what that means is we can cancel things out and solve for k. So let's get rid of the 3x squared, let's get rid of the plus 1, and we end up with is minus 4x equals negative 2kx. Okay, let's cancel out another x. So negative 4, we'll divide both sides by negative 2. So this equals 2 must equal k. So that's your answer for k. Right, just to recap, what we did here is we factored this out from this given expression. We used our foiling to figure out what the other factor must be. Then we FOILed the whole thing out, and we solved for the middle term, which generated 2 equals k. Confusing, but really helpful if you can